We're good. Good morning. I'm Representative Donna Oberlander, and I thank my colleagues and the media for being here today, as well as those joining us via live feed through the web, as we unveil House Bill 1197, the legislation to abolish the Turnpike Commission. This legislation currently has 34 co-sponsors, with more signing on every day, many of whom have joined us here this morning. With us, we have Majority Whip Stan Saylor, we have Representative Matt Gobler, Representative Jim Christiana, Representative Verb, Metcalf, Bloom, Topol, Truitt, Tallman, Lawrence, and Senator Scott Hutchison. And we've been joined by sorry there, I'm giving you a promotion, Representative Benninghoff. We will also have many coming and going as we have a lot more supporters, but many committee meetings this morning. In this legislation, PennDOT would assume all powers and duties of the Turnpike Commission as it relates to the operation, maintenance, construction, and reconstruction of the Turnpike. The Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission and the Office of Turnpike Commissioner will be abolished. PennDOT will receive all tolls and other money payable to the Commission and will in exchange be responsible for all aspects of the operations and maintenance. I believe it's very important to make this next point very clear. PennDOT shall honor all collective bargaining agreements in existence between the Turnpike Commission and any employee organization. In other words, union contracts will remain intact and most employees will feel very minimal change or disruption. Transfers to or from the Commission to PennDOT and any other state employment agency will have no impact on their civil service status or designation. This legislation creates a Bureau of Toll Administration and the position of Deputy Secretary of Toll Administration. This position's minimal education and experience requirements are spelled out in the legislation, minimizing patronage and keeping unqualified individuals out of this important job. It requires a civil engineering degree and at least 10 years of experience in designing and building highway experience. PennDOT would be authorized to fix and set tolls on any roadway or bridge under its jurisdiction. Lastly, and probably the most difficult aspect of this legislation, is the question regarding the outstanding debt that the Turnpike currently held. This legislation would appoint a committee consisting of the Treasurer, the Auditor General, the Governor, the Speaker of the House, and the President Pro Tem to deal with retiring this debt. The committee would be charged with the duties necessary to deal with the issuance, payment, and ultimate retirement of the debt. I believe that PennDOT is uniquely qualified and more than capable of handling the additional 545 miles of Turnpike roadway and bridges. As you can see from the graphics and charts, PennDOT currently maintains over 41,000 miles of highway, roads, and bridges, with far less administration per mile. Their most recent management of the stimulus funding for projects was stretched, managed, and maximized in a fashion that allowed them to achieve far more than I believe they even thought they could do, all while falling under the parameters of a state agency requiring accountability and transparency needed when using taxpayer dollars. With that, have we been joined by Representative Verb? I will hand it over to my colleague, Representative Verb, to discuss the findings of the grand jury.
Good morning. Well, I'd love to discuss the findings of the grand jury. I think anyone that joined us here in December of '09 with some of the same faces will know that none of us were shocked to hear the report. The question is, who's going to stand up and do something about it? The question is, how many punches in the face from grand juries does the General Assembly have to take on agencies like this, the DRPA soon to come, the Gaming Board? It just goes on and on and on. We can sit here, but status quo must go. And these members are here and are committed to doing something about it. Some things have changed since December of '09. They have restored a different style of leadership in the Turnpike. They have begun investigating issues that have come up to them. They have tried to straighten their image. But let me just suggest this. This tumor is beyond radiation. This tumor has penetrated every household in Pennsylvania, and we as the General Assembly are the human punching bags back home to answer the questions for what has been reported. As we see from the grand jury report, the people charged, we call it corruption. Back home, it's called organized crime. We have an obligation. We have an obligation. And in '09, there were crickets. And in '09, we were not in charge. We are now. We are going to work together with our colleagues in the Senate, and we are going to hope that there is the courage and the wisdom in both chambers and in the administration to make this change, to make these type of grand jury reports disappear. This does not make us proud to stand at a podium and blame anyone, Republican or Democrat, but this organized crime must stop. We have to stand up, we have to lead, we have to do it with Republicans, and you know, we have to do it with Democrats. We need their help. If we're all going to stand up to stop these reports, then let's do it with this bill, with Representative Oberlander's efforts, with our renewed efforts, with this Bible that we were handed by our Attorney General and former Attorney General that came out against this Turnpike Commission. We have a reason, we have a goal, we have a mission, and now what we need is some political courage. Thank you. I introduce Representative Jim Christiana.
Good morning. As Representative Verb and Oberlander mentioned, this is coming at a unique time. Obviously, it's unique in the sense that the grand jury just handed down several indictments. But it's also coming at a time when we're talking about a comprehensive transportation bill, when we're talking about taking caps off the gas tax, we're talking about increasing fines, we're talking about increasing registration fees, because we're not meeting the public's expectations for maintaining our roads and bridges. We don't have enough money going into infrastructure in Pennsylvania. That's why we have as many dilapidated bridges and roadways. But before we can ask the taxpayers to pay more, before we ask for more revenue, I think we need to look at the billions of dollars we're already spending on transportation and make sure that we are spending it as efficiently and as responsibly as possible. And if we go forward in this transportation debate and only talk about increased revenue, we're doing a disservice to the taxpayers, a disservice to Pennsylvania, and I don't think that can continue. I think this is a time where we have the opportunity and the leverage to get something comprehensive that our public has demanded for years, and it's time to deliver. Before we can ask our constituents and the people of Pennsylvania to dig into their pockets, to continue to make higher investments into infrastructure, we have a responsibility to spend the dollars that we are already spending on infrastructure more efficiently, eliminate waste and redundancy. This is a common sense approach, and Representative Oberlander has laid out why we can protect the employees of the Turnpike Commission and make sure that they still have a paycheck and they're still providing a service for that paycheck. And I think that is our obligation, as well as making sure we're spending transportation dollars as efficiently and as responsibly as possible, and we're not doing it. Thank you to Representative Oberlander for her leadership. Thank you to Representative Verb for his leadership over the last 4 years, and thanks to our colleagues for joining us.
Thank you, Representative. At this time, if we have any questions from the media, I'd be happy to take them.
I'm wondering, you know, the Turnpike Commission has outlined several reforms that they would like to implement that they think will clean up this situation. So are you saying that that's not good enough? Because I didn't hear any similar type of measures that would be in like the committee you called for.
I do not believe that is enough. I believe that right now the redundancy itself is unnecessary, and we have an organization in Pennsylvania that is dealing with the roads and bridges and would be more than capable of doing that without that redundancy. Look over here.
You're going to set up a committee that's going to look at the debt. What possible solutions can they come up with? I mean, what's the spectrum of things they can do other than the Commonwealth absorbing that debt?
There are a variety of things that they can do, including looking at refinancing, stretching, and ultimately retiring. And certainly those 5 individuals are uniquely qualified as well to deal with that situation. It is an unprecedented, and I believe that they will look at those variety of options.
Have you discussed this legislation with PennDOT? Are they interested in taking over the commission?
I haven't discussed it with PennDOT, and certainly I know in the past they haven't been able to take a position simply because of the nature of what we're doing and how we're doing it politically. And but I understand that the governor is open to it, and we have had conversations with others trying to assure that this legislation does move forward.
Before this commission hypothetically retires the debt, wouldn't having that debt on the Commonwealth's financing, would that hurt the state's borrowing power? Is that a concern?
I really don't have an answer to that question right now. Certainly that's something that they would need to consider, and one of the reasons that I mentioned it is one of the most difficult parts of the legislation. We have time for one more.
I don't see anybody from the Senate over there. So one out of a bunch of them. So what do you think this is going to have any chance of actually passing both chambers?
Certainly I'm an optimistic person, and I do believe that it's the right thing to do. It's a common sense approach, and I believe that they're looking at ways to fund our transportation system. So do I have a crystal ball? No. I do believe that we have one senator here, and I'm hopeful that we'll have more.
Are you saying you'll be you guys won't vote for what Senator Rafferty proposed in transportation unless they do this?
No, we didn't say that.
The senator was here when he's a representative. He stood with us back then, and he stands with us now. The mentality or the concept that the Senate won't do something or the House won't do something might look good in your papers. But the reality of it is there is an appetite for change. And we have to work together to encourage that appetite to take place. This is not a barter situation or a push-to-the-wall situation. Representative Christiana is referencing the fact that, as we know, in Senator Rafferty's bill, it requires more money. So we may be able to separate the turnpike here in Harrisburg, but the people back home just think it's one big bowl of money. And we have to work to make sure for our constituents that they understand we're going to make changes. And there's no statement or suggestion that this is going to be put up against a transportation bill. However, if we're going to ask our taxpayers and our citizens to spend more money for transportation, we want them to know that we're going to work on the accountability side.
That committee that you have written into the legislation, that would inject legislature's influence into the dealings in the commission. You know, when we look at the grand jury's investigation, their indictment involves the legislature. You know, why do you think that would make things cleaner?
It's not injecting them into the commission's operations. It is dealing specifically with retirement of the debt.
What kind of savings you might realize by reducing or eliminating the management. You're going to keep the union employees, but right now you have 500 employees for 540 miles of highway, managers.
Right, we worked on dollar numbers back then, but obviously there would be, at some point, there would be asset, elimination, sale, management structure elimination, sale. You can do the math with the salaries and the costs and the consultants and the outside lobbyists, and we looked at the savings back then. What the actual numbers are now, we can revisit it. I can assume that that number has grown, obviously, in 4 years as to what we could liquidate per se.
But to this point, we can't give you a quantified number. Thank you very much for being here. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you, colleagues.